DeepSeek V4 just dropped a free, open-weights model that matches billion-dollar frontier systems. While the EU quietly rewrote the AI Act timeline and the White House began studying a new AI security executive order triggered by Anthropic's terrifying Mythos model. Today, the weak compression became a metaphor for everything happening in AI. From a team at the Synthetic Daily, it's Monday, May 11th, 2026. Good to have you with us.
We went through 33 posts, articles, and threads across LinkedIn, Substack, and YouTube over the past week to dive deeper into the world of AI policy and security.
Let's start with the story that racked up over 150,000 engagements on YouTube this week, and for good reason. DeepSeek V4 landed, described in a 58-page research paper, fully open weights, and it's matching frontier models that cost billions to develop. Dr. Carolee Zolnai-Feher of 2-Minute Papers walked through the technical details, and they're genuinely clever. The headline number is a 1 million token context window in an open weights model. That's roughly 1,500 pages of dense text. Google's Gemini had that as a flagship feature 2 years ago. Now it's free.
Exactly. But the real engineering story is how they got there. DeepSeek uses 3 layers of what they call KV cache compression. Think of it like reading a book 3 different ways. First, token-level compression. You squeeze each paragraph into one sentence. You keep the full book, but now you can search it faster. Second, what they call heavily compressed attention, a 1:28:1 compression ratio, like reading only the table of contents to grasp the plot. Third, compressed sparse attention, an index. You're looking for a specific fight scene? The index gives you the top 5 pages. Stack all 3 together and memory needs for the KV cache drop by about 90%.
Now here's what matters for anyone running inference at scale. The Pro model uses roughly 3 times less compute than its predecessor during long-form generation, and the lighter Flash model uses 10 times less. The pricing, if you use DeepSeek's hosted API, comes in at 8 to 30 times cheaper than Anthropic's Claude, depending on discounts. Zolnai-Feher's line that intelligence will get too cheap to meter is hyperbolic, but directionally, he's not wrong.
The limitations are real though. This is a text-only, unimodal system. No images, no audio. And even DeepSeek's own technical paper concedes that V4 trails state-of-the-art frontier models by roughly 3 to 6 months. So it's not beating the best systems today. It's matching where they were last fall, and handing that capability to anyone with an internet connection for free.
There's another angle worth talking about. While DeepSeek gives away frontier-adjacent capabilities, Washington is increasingly treating the entire Chinese open-source AI ecosystem as a national security problem. This week, the picture got sharper. A White House OSDP memo accused China of running tens of thousands of proxy accounts against American AI platforms, not just using them, but systematically distilling them. The goal? Extract the reasoning patterns and knowledge from models like GPT and Claude, then strip out the safety guardrails.
Executives from both OpenAI and Anthropic disclosed to the House Foreign Affairs Committee that they've detected this adversarial distillation activity on their platforms. And Congress escalated further. House Homeland Security Chairman Garbarino and Select Committee on China Chairman Molinar announced a joint investigation into the national security risks of PRC-developed AI models. Not just DeepSeek, but also Alibaba's, Moonshot AI's, and Minimax's systems.
The Council on Foreign Relations published an analysis this week arguing the U.S. leads China by roughly 3 to 6 months on raw frontier capability, but that the gap matters less than you'd think. DeepSeek's open-source, ultra-low-cost structure might matter more for global adoption and military-civil fusion than whether it matches GPT-5 on a benchmark. The Stanford AI Index 2026 agrees. Chinese companies have effectively closed the performance gap with their American rivals.
Meanwhile, enforcement on the hardware side is tightening and loosening simultaneously in ways that confuse everyone. The Trump administration quietly let NVIDIA resume H20 shipments to China just 3 months after halting them. But the DOJ arrested Supermicro's co-founder for allegedly smuggling NVIDIA-equipped servers to China via Taiwan. Congress passed the Chip Security Act in March, which would embed physical tracking technology directly into chips. Chatham House called the whole strategy incoherent, arguing that hardware-only controls simply won't prevent Chinese AI development.
On May 7th, EU lawmakers reached political agreement on revisions to the AI Act, and the headline is a big exhale for compliance teams everywhere. The deadline for high-risk AI systems, the ones in Annex 3 covering things like hiring tools, credit scoring, and critical infrastructure, got pushed from August 2026 to December 2027. That's a 16-month reprieve. Regulatory sandboxes at the national level delayed to August 2027.
Which is wild, right? Here's the thing nobody's tweeting about. The EU simultaneously tightened other requirements. The grace period for implementing transparency solutions on AI-generated content, watermarking, labeling, disclosure, got cut from 6 months to 3 months, with a hard deadline of December 2nd, 2026. That's this year. If you're shipping generative AI products in Europe, you have about 7 months to get watermarking right.
The EU also added a new outright prohibition. AI systems that generate non-consensual sexually explicit content or child sexual abuse material. The so-called notification apps are now explicitly banned. That's a direct response to the explosion of deepfake intimate imagery over the past year. And the Commission opened a consultation on May 8th on draft guidelines for AI transparency obligations, essentially asking industry to help define what adequate disclosure actually looks like before the rules harden.
That's a great point. The law firm Travers Smith described the deal as bringing much-needed certainty after a fraught end to April, when negotiations almost broke down. For American companies selling into Europe, the message is nuanced. You have more time on the hardest compliance requirements, but less time on transparency and new prohibitions you need to audit against immediately.
Here's a story that connects several threads. Federal News Network reported this week that the White House is studying a new AI security executive order. What triggered it? Anthropic's disclosure of its Mythos model, a system reportedly capable of quickly finding and exploiting decades-old vulnerabilities in widely deployed software. The implication is stark. If a model like this leaked, or if an equivalent capability were distilled by an adversary, attackers could discover and weaponize new 0 days faster than defenders could patch them.
In response, NIST Center for AI Standards and Innovation, CAISI, announced new pre-deployment testing agreements with Google DeepMind, Microsoft, and xAI. The idea is that CAISI gets to evaluate frontier models before they ship. But here's the problem. The Trump-aligned America First Policy Institute called CAISI chronically underfunded, with about 30 total staff and only $30 million received since it was established in 2024. Canada and Singapore both spend more on their equivalent AI safety centers.
So we're in this strange position where the U.S. government is simultaneously trying to pre-screen the world's most powerful AI models and operating the screening office on a shoestring budget. Meanwhile, Colorado's comprehensive AI legislation takes effect June 30th, and the federal government is pushing for a single national framework to preempt state-by-state fragmentation. The fight over whether AI governance happens in Washington or in 50 state capitals is about to get very real, very fast. So let's talk about ISACA's 2026 AI Pulse Poll that dropped a number this week that should make every CISO uncomfortable. Only 12% of organizations have a documented, regularly tested process for shutting down or overriding AI systems when something goes wrong. 12%. That means 88% of organizations deploying AI today are essentially flying without a kill switch they've ever actually pulled.
You know what stood out to me? Nate Jones, who's short on AI governance, picked up traction this week, framed it elegantly. He describes two curves on the same chart. The first curve, AI capability, goes up exponentially. Reasoning depth, context length, agentic endurance, all accelerating. The second curve, what he calls societal dissipation, the rate at which capabilities actually permeate the economy, is way flatter. The gap between those curves is where we all live today.
Chris Hughes at Resilient Cyber highlighted a related problem through his coverage of Project Veil, the verifiable artificial intelligence layer. Most organizations can't answer a basic question: which model is actually running in their production environment? Model substitution, supply chain compromise, adversarial fine-tuning. These are live risk vectors, and industry has been relying on contractual guarantees rather than technical controls. Project Veil, founded by Manish Shah, the co-founder of LiveRamp, is trying to build cryptographic model attestation. Think of it like a software bill of materials, but for the neural network itself.
The SEC's 2026 examination priorities underline the shift. Cybersecurity and AI governance have displaced cryptocurrency as the top focus area. The adults in the regulatory room are pivoting fast. The question is whether enterprise governance can pivot with them.
Amid all the governance drama and geopolitical maneuvering, SWIX's Latent Space podcast this week featured Professor Heather Kulik, one of the first materials scientists to combine computational tools with data-driven modeling. The episode is a reminder that while we obsess over chatbots and benchmarks, AI's most durable impact may be in domains most people never think about.
Kulik's argument is that the wins in AI for science are real, but only when you deeply integrate domain expertise with AI techniques. You can't just throw a transformer at a materials problem and expect breakthroughs. The glass on your phone screen, the synthetic fibers in your gym clothes, the chip substrates powering the device you're reading this on. All of those required decades of materials research. AI can compress that timeline, but only if the people building the models understand the physics.
This is the kind of AI progress that doesn't make headlines because there's no leaderboard and no viral demo. But it may ultimately matter more than whether DeepSeek matches Claude on a coding benchmark. When you can discover a new battery electrolyte in weeks instead of years, or identify a more durable alloy for jet turbines without running 10,000 physical experiments, that's when AI becomes transformative in the way the optimists promise. The catch, as Kulik's work shows, is that it requires patience, domain depth, and a willingness to do the hard integrative work that doesn't fit in a tweet. All right, let's zoom out and talk about the bigger picture. What are the main themes running through everything we covered today? The first big theme is compression as competitive weapon. DeepSeek's three-layer KV cache compression isn't just an engineering trick. It's a business model that makes frontier-adjacent intelligence economically accessible to any organization worldwide, shifting competitive advantage from capital expenditure to algorithmic ingenuity.
Next, governance velocity mismatch. Regulators on 3 continents are simultaneously accelerating and delaying different parts of AI governance, creating a patchwork where companies face tighter deadlines on transparency while getting more runway on high-risk compliance. A combination that rewards those who invested early in disclosure infrastructure.
Next, model provenance as the next security frontier. The convergence of adversarial distillation, model substitution attacks, and supply chain risks is making cryptographic model attestation, knowing exactly which model is running in your environment, the 2026 equivalent of software supply chain security in 2021.
And the last one, capability adoption gap as investment thesis. The widening delta between what AI can theoretically do and what organizations have the governance, workforce, and institutional trust to actually deploy creates a massive market for the boring middle layer. Compliance tooling, model verification, kill switch infrastructure. So if you're going to take away a few things from today's episode, here's what I'd remember.
Number 1. When intelligence gets cheap enough, the bottleneck shifts entirely to governance, trust, and institutional readiness. And that's exactly where most organizations are least prepared.
Number 2. The US-China AI competition is no longer primarily about who has the best model. It's about who controls the distribution channel and whether open weights make the capability gap strategically irrelevant.
Number 3. If your organization can't cryptographically verify which AI model is running in production, you have a supply chain vulnerability that no vendor contract can close.
And finally, the EU's simultaneous delay and tighten approach means the compliance winners will be companies that treated transparency infrastructure as table stakes 2 years ago.
That's the Synthetic Daily for today. All the sources and links are on the website if you want to dig deeper.
Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.